The concept of destiny is flawed. No child is born violent. Neither is any child born a leader. A mother looks at her child and sees the best in them, what they could be, what they should be. She doesn't see that sometimes, by circumstance, her innocent baby will grow up to become the murderer of thousands, the destroyer of worlds. And how could she? How could she ever fathom that the one she risked and sacrificed everything for would become a monster? In many ways, we live for others. We spend our lives building and managing trust, quartering and dividing hope and belief. But what happens when you are born into distrust, thrust into violence, forced to become a monster so you can sleep at night, knowing the ones you love are safe? Sometimes, there's no other choice but to make your own life a tragedy. This is the story of Jango Fett. Born on the Mandalorian world of Concord Dawn, Jango underwent a rather unremarkable childhood, growing up beside his older sister Arla on their parents' farm. His father was a journeyman protector, a politician of the planet that took over the position when Jaster Muriel became Mandalore, leader of the True Mandalorians. And his mother lived an honest life as a farmer. For Jango, life was quiet, normal. Happiness was found in the presence of his loved ones, and soft content imbued the sunrises and sunsets, the endless fields, the very air of Concord Dawn. But while Jango and his sister found shelter in the calm protection of their homeworld, war was brewing on the horizon. Tensions between the True Mandalorians, a group of super commandos led by Jaster Muriel, and the violent splinter group Death Watch, led by Tor Vizsla, spread rapidly through the Mandalorian worlds. And when civil war finally broke, its influence splattered into the lives of every Mandalorian man, woman, and child. Still, Jango and his sister were sheltered. When Jango's parents, as old friends of Jaster Muriel, offered the True Mandalorians refuge at their homestead, still, Jango and his sister were sheltered. But when the Death Watch finally located Muriel and his forces, this protection warped into disaster. Jango was captured by Vizsla while doing his daily chores, and he was forced to watch while the Death Watch brutally murdered both his parents. Although Jango ultimately managed to escape into the fields, he did so having lost his family, his home, everything. As he replayed the scene of his parents' grisly death in his mind, he felt something. Something different. Something hot, smoldering. And as he dwelled on the feeling, it began to spread. It raced through his frame, erased his grief, and filled the young boy with a fierce determination. So when the True Mandalorians launched a counterattack on Death Watch, Jango joined the initiative. Using the firefight as a distraction, he planted an explosive charge underneath the Death Watch tank, destroying it completely. And in that moment, out of the corner of his eye, he found the man that had killed his parents. He tackled him, knocking the much older man to the ground as he struggled to draw his weapon. But the rogue Mandalorian's reach was faster, and Jango was slashed across his chest with a vibroblade. Ignoring the excruciating pain, Jango was finally able to draw his blaster, shooting and killing his parents' murderer. When the battle was over, still panting and plagued with fatigue, Jango felt a warm figure pick him up. And as darkness closed around him, his last sight was that of Jaster Muriel. In the years to come, Jaster Muriel raised Jango as he would his own son, and under the guidance of the Lord Mandalore, he grew into a deadly and capable warrior. To the young, orphaned boy, Muriel had again given purpose, and Jango was happy. Now a Mandalorian, Jango was placed in charge of a relatively basic extraction operation, where he and his team were to recover a group of security personnel pinned down by local hostiles. However, the intelligence reports turned out to be inaccurate when they were met with a much heavier and well-equipped force. The situation quickly turned dangerous when the expected group of security personnel turned out to be a Death Watch ambush. While Fett fought back the Death Watch soldiers, Muriel and his second-in-command Montrose came under attack by Vizsla himself. It was then that Montrose, frustrated by Muriel's leadership, abandoned the injured Mandalore and fled the battle. Although Jango rushed to save the man that had raised him like a father, he was too late, as Vizsla pushed his attack. It was in Fett's arms that Muriel finally passed away. And again, Jango was alone. Returning to the landing zone, Jango discovered that Montrose had continued to seize control, implying that Muriel would have wanted him to take over as the new Mandalore. But when Fett, placing the body of his adoptive father in front of the traitor, revealed the truth of Montrose's betrayal, the other Mandalorians denounced the would-be Mandalore and proclaimed that they would only follow Fett. As a young man, Jango was now the Mandalore, a leader of millions and an icon of strength. But gaze fixed on the still body of Muriel, he was scared. He didn't hear the chants of his fellow bruised yet proud warriors. He didn't feel the pride of his mighty accomplishment. Instead, worry paralyzed every detail of his body. He was the boy that had stood motionless as his parents were brutally murdered, that had been helpless to save Jaster, who had seen his sister carried away by Vizsla and had simply watched. In an instant, his family had grown to the count of millions, and he had no idea how he was going to protect them all. The legend of Jango Fett grew as he led the Mandalorians in battle after battle. His reputation as a strategically brilliant leader and unstoppable warrior spread throughout the galaxy, eventually reaching the ears of the Jedi Council itself. During a mission on the planet of Galadron, Jango Fett and the Mandalorians were hired to put down a small insurrection. The pay was significant, and the operation had an air of simplicity that seemed almost unworthy of their services. Yet after hearing that the governor of Galadron was in close proximity to Tor's Vizsla, Jango accepted the task. The mission proved to be a trap, an eerie recreation of the battle that had killed Jaster Muriel, as the governor revealed that he was not only funding the Death Watch, but actively harboring their forces in his castle. Fett and his forces successfully fled the scene with their lives, but were unable to leave the planet as the presence of the governor's ships precluded any attempt to enter a landing dock. And unfortunately, while the Mandalorians recovered, Vizsla and the governor had already put together a plot, claiming that the Mandalorians were murdering the political activists of the planet, along with women and children. And they begged the Jedi Council to step in and put a stop to them. As the Jedi ships, led by Master Count Dooku and his then Padawan Kamari Vosa, landed on Galadron, the Mandalorians, despite being outnumbered and destined for failure, prepared to fight to the death. It was then that Fett would carry out an act that would make him both famous and infamous for the rest of his life and career. Using no weapon beyond his own hands, feet, and armored body, Fett killed 6 Jedi, including the one responsible for his second-in-command's death. But while his efforts were impressive, the outcome of the battle seemed inevitable. And as the sole survivor of the battle, Fett was eventually subdued by the Jedi and delivered into the custody of the governor. Stripped of his armor, his dignity, his honor, Jango Fett, leader of the Mandalorians, a legendary warrior, was sold into slavery. But who in the galaxy could hope to contain the Mandalore? Within 2 years, Jango Fett had escaped, found his lost armor, and made his way back onto the planet of Galadron, the inception of his clan's destruction and the site that had marked the beginning of his captivity. Despite having no real opportunity to train or maintain his skills in combat, Jango proved once again that, from a vengeful Mandalorian, moreover from the Mandalore himself, no single being in the galaxy was safe. With ease, he infiltrated the castle of the governor of Galadron, disarming his guards and making his way into the main chamber where the governor resided. Kicking down the door to the governor's extravagant room, Jango pointed a blaster at his once captor, and although he wished nothing more than to pull the trigger and end the life of the man that had ruined his, he knew there was far more important prey to chase. With this in mind, Jango offered the governor a choice: his life or the location of Death Watch. After defeating Jango at the Battle of Galadron, Vizsla had grown the forces of the Death Watch to rival those of the true Mandalorians, and many in the galaxy had already grown accustomed to their presence. Millions recognized their authority as the dominant Mandalorian sect, a far cry from the dangerous but ultimately small nuisance that it had been during Jango's career. However, armed with the information provided by the governor, in 42 BBY, 18 years after the Death Watch had murdered his family and burned down his home, 3 years after they had again destroyed his life and sold him into slavery, Jango found the Death Watch. With stunning dexterity, Jango intercepted Vizsla's personal starship over Corellia, using a stolen starfighter to cripple the ship's engines and his jetpack to fly through the broken viewport. There, he clashed with Vizsla in a lengthy fight that spanned the hulls of the dying ship. Eventually, the two were driven into an escape pod, fighting still as the ship died around them. Smoke and fire filled the hulls as they launched from the side port, continuing on to crash onto the surface of Corellia. As the wondrous forests of Corellia span out around them, the two warriors clashed violently, tumbling into a river beside 2 rocks and a giant oak. It was here that Vizsla finally gained the upper hand. Using Fett's momentary disorientation as a distraction, Vizsla stabbed the once glorious Mandalore between the armor plates on his torso with a poisoned blade, taunting him that Jaster Muriel would be disappointed. Rage. The same rage that had permeated his body so many years ago, flared again within Jango. And drawing a blade concealed within his gauntlets, he fought through the excruciating pain to carve a deep wound across Vizsla's abdomen, falling backwards as the poison took a paralyzing effect on his body. The injury drew a pack of nearby dire cats that began to circle the two wounded rivals. But in the end, while Jango was spared due to the poison, Vizsla was torn apart by the pack of hungry animals, thus finally ending the reign of Death Watch, and with it, the Mandalorian Civil War. Stripped of purpose, Jango grew distant from the rest of his people and his role of Mandalore, instead turning to the solitary life of a bounty hunter. Those who met him during this period of time described the former leader of Mandalore as a cold and dispossessed husk, an uncaring beast that lived solely for money, whose loyalty was sold to the highest bidder. But even amongst all this, a remnant of Jango's humanity lived through his ship, which bore the name Jaster's Legacy.
Well done, Jango. Miko's bounty, courtesy of the Correctional Authority.
You're short, Ross. Not trying to swindle me, are you?
Hey, you're forgetting my finder's fee. Oh, I'm not even counting the damage to my station. I'm just glad to be rid of that scum. But Miko wasn't the only reason I asked you to come back. A transmission came for you. It's personal. I didn't even peek.
Greetings, Jango Fett. I am Tyrannus. I have a proposition for you. You are one of a select few chosen to participate in a special hunt for a special prey. If you succeed, the reward will be in the amount of 5 million Republic credits.
5 million? Wow, that could make you for life. Who's the poor sap with that kind of price on his head, huh?
You mean her head?
You are to locate and capture Komari Vosa, dead or alive, the deranged leader of the Bando Gora.
No, Jango. Not the Bando Gora. It's too dangerous even for you.
Like you said, this hunt can make me.
Or break you. No bounty hunter who set out after the Bando Gora has ever returned.
Worried about losing your finder's fees?
Now that's not fair. You know I worry about you.
What else do you know about this Bando Gora?
Although Rosata, affectionately known to the bounty hunter as Raz, would worriedly warn Fett of the Bando Gora's ominous reputation, remembering that all the bounty hunters that had set out to defeat the Bando Gora in the past had disappeared. She would eventually be the one to provide him with his only lead, a death stick dealer on Coruscant named Jervis Gloom, with possible ties to the cult's operations. Jango searched for Gloom, while successful in providing him with a name, Graf Hog, also put him in the path of an old rival, Montross, the ambitious former Mandalorian who had abandoned Jaster Muriel to the Death Watch, and had then been exiled from the planet. Having also received Tyrannus' offer, he had already been on the search for any possible connections to the Bando Gora, and unfortunately for Jango, figured it out first. Before Jango could even track down Hog, Montross had already retrieved any information he had and brutally frozen him to death in carbonite. Yet, there was a silver lining in the two old rivals' violent encounter. Following the battle with Montross, Jango learned through various sources that Senator Trell of Ryloth was somehow involved in the Death Stick trade. Heading to the upper city, Jango broke into the Senator's apartment with an expected ease, locating, subduing, and ultimately dangling the powerful Twi'lek over the edge of a balcony.
Please don't kill me! Anything you want, name your price!
Komari Vosa, where is she?
Vosa? I don't know any Vosa!
You were saying?
Sebulto, our supplier, he asked me to move a new kind of death stick for the Bando Gora. I don't know anything more. He knows. He's on Malestar. Ah, let me go!
Release the Senator, or we will open fire!
Do what he says, bounty hunter.
Release him, now!
As you wish.
No, wait!
Blast him!
Leaving Coruscant, Jango would embark on a journey through the galaxy. His would be a tale of redemption and hope, of past sorrows giving way to future joys, an examination of failure and its ultimate necessity for success. With the help of Raz and a novice bounty hunter named Zam Wessel, Jango would endure the dangers of Uvo 4, uncover the Huttese mysteries of Malastare, track down the Bando Gora, and defeat Komari Vosa. And along the way, he would encounter the one thing he had resigned to as impossible: friendship. Although Raz would meet an unfortunate demise at the hands of Montross, she would instill in him again the virtues of life, of finding purpose, of escaping the deadly cycle of fighting, of war. As such, as Jango cradled his last remaining companion in his arms, Raz's voice would rise to a whisper, just loud enough to hear her last wish.
Just
Find something to live for besides the money. You deserve more. Now, go. Get out of here while you still can. See you on the other side. Jango!
Having tracked Jango through this long and arduous journey, Lord Tyrannus would approach the successful bounty hunter, and having given up any effort at pretenses, he would finally reveal the true intent behind this mission.
Which will it be, bounty hunter? Dead or alive? He is here.
Congratulations, bounty hunter.
Tyrannus.
I'm impressed. No ordinary man can defeat one trained in the Jedi arts, especially one trained by me. Komari Vosa was once an excellent pupil, if a bit unstable.
You knew Vosa was here.
I thought she might one day prove a valuable ally. Instead, she became a liability.
If you could have easily killed her before, why put a price on her head?
To find you. This contest brought you to me.
I'll collect the reward now.
Of course, of course. 5 million, was it? Or much more, if you'll come with me to Camino, to be cloned.
You want to clone me?
Imagine an army of clones, the training of which you will oversee. They will be modified to grow at twice the rate of ordinary men, and will be programmed for absolute loyalty. They will be magnificent, perfect warriors, like you.
What makes you think I'd be interested?
A chance at immortality, to pass on your ways to an army crafted in your image. A great deal of money. How could a man such as you not be interested?
I'll accept your offer, Tyrannus, on one condition.
And that is?
I want the first clone for myself, unmodified.
Might I inquire as to why?
You might.
Very well. Consider it done. We have a deal then, Jango Fett.
Deal.
Guess you got her, huh?
You could say that.
So, we're going to split the bounty 50-50, right?
Don't push your luck, Sam.
Boba Fett, as this untampered clone would be named, would be Fett's fulfillment of his promise to Roz. Boba was now his life, an apprentice and son that would become Jaster's legacy and revive the Mandalorians. Even after his death, Jango lived on in the approximately 2 million units of clone soldiers being trained to fight for the Jedi Order. Unfortunately for him, he never lived to see his clones participate in the Clone Wars, nor would he ever see his son, Boba, continue his bounty hunting legacy, using his father's weapons and ship, as well as the suit of Mandalorian armor once worn by Jaster Muriel. After his death at the hands of Jedi Master Mace Windu, Jango was buried on Geonosis by his son, Boba, with the simple initials JF on the headstone. But in 40 ABY, nearly 50 years later, Boba, along with his granddaughter Mirta, would retrieve his father's remains from Geonosis and take them to his homeworld of Mandalore, where he could finally be at rest next to Boba's daughter, Island Vel. The clone army born of Jango's DNA would go on to become the greatest Republic army in history, engaging in thousands of battles with the Separatists in a war that spanned the galaxy. Eventually, it would be Jango's clones that turned on the Jedi, his DNA, his life and blood, that would turn the page of civilization and begin anew, a reign of fear and terror. Thus, while Jango's life came to an end at the Battle of Geonosis, his influence on the Clone Wars, on the fall of the Republic, and the rise of the Galactic Empire on the galaxy remains unsurpassed to this day. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.